Okay. Colossians 3:16 through 17 in the New American Standard Bible say, "Let the peace of Christ, to which you were indeed called in one body, rule in your hearts, and be thankful. Let the word of Christ richly dwell within you, with all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another with psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, singing with thankfulness in your hearts to God. Whatsoever you do in word or deed, do everything in the name of Lord Jesus, giving thanks through him to God the Father." In the book of Colossians, or letter of Colossians, St. Paul is addressing a potential heresy in the church that has to do with like synchronism. Paul emphasizes the sufficiency of Christ throughout the letter, and here he writes about the importance of teaching and making music together. Will Burton-Edwards, why do you think Paul may have stressed the importance of letting Christ dwell in us through music here? Like what pops in your head when you hear about that?
I think the most important thing that we can do as a community together is to sing, is to worship with the full instrument that God gave us. And throughout Christian history, throughout really the history of religions globally, people have always come together to sing songs together, to give thanks for the world that was created around them, to give thanks for one another, and to draw one another into deeper unity with one another and with the world that they were given.
Yeah. Good stuff. Strong stuff. Love it. Hey guys, welcome to the Whole Church Holy Logistics series. On the Whole Church podcast, we're looking behind the scenes of how church gets made, how the sausage of church gets made, comes to be. And today's going to be a fun one as we're here with Will Burton-Edwards. Will here is works with the Cornel Zimmer Organ Builders. He's going to be talking with us about the process of building pipe organs. If your church has an organ, you can learn about some of that today. And if your church doesn't have an organ, you can learn maybe about why it should. Or if you just think, hey, maybe that's interesting, or music in general, what it adds to the church, we'll go over lots of different stuff with that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Will, am I missing anything else that you think I should mention introducing you here, man?
I think you pretty much nailed it. Yeah.
Thanks. I like the compliment. I'm Joshua Noel. I'm just here to introduce people. I'm not good at the beginning or end of this podcast. I was like, that's TJ's part. Where is he? I don't know, man. He's the pod almighty. He's out doing important, podfather stuff. No, he's on vacation. I rescheduled at an inconvenient time for him. This is my fault. So, with that, though, you can go to our website, purchase one of our t-shirts. It helps promote the show, raise money for our podcasting needs, gets others to know about the importance of our mission to educate and unite the modern church. A lot of good come from just doing that one thing of like buying a t-shirt off a website. That link's in the show's description. There's a few different options. My favorite is the Irish Trinity knot on the back, because I just like the Irish Trinity knot, and it represents the unity of God and talks about how we also are united as the church. Currently, though, I think I'm wearing the Divided Church one. I don't know. There's a few options on there. Check them out. They're cool. But I'm going to skip all that other stuff. We're part of the Anazal Podcast Network. You can see the network down below. There's other shows on there. They're cool. TJ and I are on Systematic Ecology, yada, yada, yada. My favorite sacrament is the sacrament of silliness. We're going to get silly on here because you can't be divided when you're being as silly as I like to be. So, with all that said, Will, we always start with a silly question. Very important. Very important. Yeah. Which bug or animal do you think would make for the silliest kaiju monster? So, like, we have Godzilla, we got King Kong. Mm-hmm. What would be the silliest one? I love Mothra. Which, honestly, if it didn't exist, I'd be like, oh, Moths are silly. Turns out not. Mothra's cool. I'm going to go, just because I have, like, the world's sweetest, quietest little dog. And she's a Chihuahua. Now, I think, regardless if you get the sweet, quiet one or the yappy one, Kaiju Chihuahua is going to be funny either way. even if it's
Definitely.
a menace.
Yeah.
So I'm going Chihuahua Kaiju Monster.
No, I'd be interested in
What?
how it sounds. Like, would it still sound
Still
that
be yappy?
that yippy, but just
Just
at a
loud.
just louder, or would it be at a
I
lower
hope so.
pitch?
I hope so. I hope a loud yippee.
Could it growl and cause earthquakes a hemisphere away?
One can dream. One can dream. Will, what about you, man? What is the silliest you could think of for a kaiju monster?
I feel like a sea cucumber might be kind of fun.
That'd be great.
Just this big amorphous
What would it even
blob
do?
slowly crawling its way towards shore, but can't quite get there. Can't quite leave the ocean. Can't quite stay on land. That
For
sort of
all we
thing.
know, that monster might be canon. We wouldn't see it
might
in the
be.
movie.
Right? It might already exist. It might be under there. There are lots
Yeah.
of things that can
You
come
gotta
out of
read
that
the director's
found
notes.
specific faults. Yeah.
It's in the subtext.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful, man. I love it. I love it. So
It's in the rubrics, field notes.
yeah. So let's get to more of the serious stuff in the series. Before we talk about organs, I'd like to know a little bit more about you, man.
Sure.
Well, what could you tell us some about just yourself, your own journey, your journey with faith, anything like that? Who is Will?
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up as the child of two clergy people. My father was a Methodist pastor, and my mother is an Episcopal priest. And so growing up, church was always. I mean, church was an important part of my spiritual life, but more importantly, church was what my parents did for work. And so when it came to forming my own spirituality, that really started when I was away from the churches that I grew up in, and I was at a summer camp that was funded in large part by the Episcopal Diocese of Indianapolis, where I grew up.
Mhm.
That camp is called Waycross, and if you live anywhere within driving distance of Brown County, Indiana, send your kids there. It's an amazing place. They will grow into mature, spiritually formed adults and maintain friendships for a lifetime. Um, but that's where I kind of began my relationship with God. And when I say relationship, I'm not just talking about this sort of personal relationship of an intercessor purely within my brain and within my mind that I can personally commune with through prayer. I'm talking about a
Mhm.
relationship with God that includes care for creation and includes care for the relationships that surround and that sustain me. And
Yeah.
my spiritual life has always been about the people that I share the religion with, um, more than a personal relationship with a sort of intercessor in my head.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like that. I like that. Um, cool, man. So with that, then, how do we go from Will at church camp, which also it's cool because TJ and I became friends and met at church camp, so it's just cool.
Ah,
But
it's beautiful. Yeah,
how do we
great thing.
go from Will forming that relationship at camp to Will working with organs, man? How did you get into the organ crafting business?
Sure, yeah. So I did not intend to do this. This wasn't something that I went to school for. It wasn't something that I really dreamed about doing from a young age. Um,
Mhm.
I went to college to study physics and theater arts. And upon graduation, I
Interesting.
did a whole bunch of auditions for a whole bunch of different theater companies. And the company that hired me was in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I moved here where I still live. And
Oh, so
that
you're over by
company,
me.
I guess I
Oh,
do.
that's
Yeah, I
cool.
didn't
Yeah.
I didn't know that
Yeah. Well,
you were
we'll
local.
catch
That's
up later.
awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah.
Um, but that theater company, which is amazing, and I'm not gonna say the name, but they, much like a school, will lay you off for about 2 months over summertime, and so I needed a job that could tide me over for my first summer off. And through connections with, actually in my church choir, I met a guy who happened to work for this weird company that makes pipe organs for churches. And because of my theater background,
That's so cool.
I had some experience building sets and working in a shop in a wood shop. And so, I can drill it. I can drive a screw. I can push boards through a table saw. I've got those basic, shop
Mhm.
skills. And so he recommended that I be hired, and I worked my first summer there and never really turned back because the work is interesting, and I get to work with people who are really, really grateful for the work that we do. And perhaps more importantly, because I'm not tied to an actor's salary, I get to have health insurance, which is great. I like having that. So,
Yeah.
so I just kind of never looked back, and I love the work that
Yeah,
I do.
man.
It's really, really important.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's so cool. And I know, so many churches rely on the organ for that morning service worship. And
Totally.
yeah. Um, I have a few questions. I'm trying to feel like narrow down. I think the best thing I want to ask right now, though, you have you went to school partially for physics. Does that
Mhm.
play a role in what you do with like organs? Because I mean,
It
music's
absolutely
weird,
does.
you know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how nerdy you want me to get about this, but
Oh, the nerdiest, the
okay.
nerdiest.
Well,
That's what podcasts are for.
so I can tell you that organ pipes are organized by length, and the length of each pipe determines the pitch that it plays at. And obviously, the larger the pipe is, the lower the pitch that it plays. And if you look at the stop knobs on either side of the keyboards on an organ console, you'll see usually an instrument name that stop that set of pipes is trying to emulate, and you'll see a number, and that number is going to be 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, or in some cases 64. And what that number means is the length in feet of the longest pipe that rank of pipes contains. And so an 8-foot stop means that the bottom pipe is 8 feet long. A 16-foot stop means that the bottom of that range is played by a pipe that's 16 feet long and 32 feet long, and so on and so forth. The reason why those are multiples of 2 is because an octave, that idea of going from do to do, right? Those two notes are a doubling of the frequency between the two, right? If you've probably heard of A 440, meaning A playing at 440 hertz. Well, the A that's an octave below that plays at 220 hertz. And an octave below that is 110, an octave below that is 55, an octave below that is 25 and a half, and so on. And as you get bigger and bigger and bigger, the frequency gets lower and lower and lower. And of course, as the pipe gets bigger and bigger, it takes more wind, more physical air moving to drive it to make that sound. So when you're building out a pipe organ, you need to consider having enough air to supply the largest pipes that are going to be
Yeah.
contained in it, with enough sensitivity in the pressure to not throw the pitch off of the smallest pipes that you're building for it.
Okay. Two quick follow-ups.
Sure.
I'll do the quicker one first. Sound like another instrument? Like, okay, so obviously you don't have them try to sound like trumpets. Like, what can you do? Maybe just
Well,
tell me what you mean.
actually,
What? Is there a
so
trumpet? There's a
there
trumpet
are
organ?
trumpets. There are trumpets. There are oboes. There are tubas.
What?
Organs can emulate pretty much any instrument
That is
that's ever been
wild.
created. And actually, there are a number of instruments that are essential to organ stop lists that aren't even made anymore. Instruments like a gamba, which is similar to a cello, or like an ophicleide, which is like if a tuba and a saxophone had a baby.
What?
There are
This is
lots of
fascinating.
instruments that we've made over the years, and the pipe organ is, in some cases, the only kind of instrument that still produces the sound that those instruments of old used to make. But yeah,
What?
so when you're creating an organ, you aren't just cramming a whole bunch of pipes in there at random. You're creating something that can create the entire sound of a symphony. And some organs even contain percussion units that have drums and cymbals and triangles and
What?
all sorts of stuff.
What? Okay, so the other follow-up, maybe less shorter. I'm trying to make it shorter, but I'm just like my brain is so like when I'm sitting in church, I feel
Mhm.
like I see like, maybe 10 pipes on each side. I'm like, that's cool. But like what you're talking about sounds like all kind of different thickness and heights, and like in order to really get all of that sound, like there's got to be a lot of pipes, right? Like it's not just those 10 I'm seeing, is it?
Yes, yeah. So the
Okay.
the the 10 or so pipes that you'll see are part of what's called the facade. That's the front of the organ. That's the
Oh.
pretty part that you see. And 9 times out of 10, the pipes that you see in that facade aren't actually doing anything. They're just standing there to look pretty.
Okay. Okay.
We call those
Cool.
dummy pipes because they don't speak.
They do look cool. But yeah.
They do look cool, yes. Sometimes the pipes in a facade do speak, and they're part of a larger set of pipes that's just contained in a room behind where that facade sits. But yeah, usually the pipes that you can see aren't ever going to play any music.
many
The
pipes
remainder of the
are there?
instrument is behind that facade, and it contains anywhere from a few hundred to several thousand pipes.
So there's never just like 15, 20
No.
or almost never. Okay. Wow.
So,
that is
so
crazy.
So if you think about the keyboard, right? A piano keyboard has 88 keys on it. And organ keyboards usually have 61 keys on them, which means that for every rank that you have, every set of pipes, you need 61 pipes, one for each of the keys that are on that keyboard. So it starts to take up an awful lot of space.
Yeah.
Especially if you think about like a 16-foot stop, right? Bottom C of that, the biggest note is 16 feet tall, several inches wide, up to, possibly a foot wide. And so if you think about 61 notes that are that size, it takes up an awful lot of room.
Oh, man, that's so cool. Okay, so, man. So, well, yeah, I'm glad you have some physics background. Like, I don't know if physics worth anything, but I'm hearing this going, this sounds like a logistics nightmare. Because, like,
It totally can
what
be.
I know of, like, how things work in general is, like, if there's one slight dent in something, it doesn't quite work right. And I'm like, we're talking about, like, hundreds of pipes. I feel like if one little thing's wrong, it would mess everything up, right? Like, does it have to basically be perfect? Or
For the most part, yeah, it does. Actually, which is
sounds like that would cost a lot to maintain that, or is it like
it does.
you just make it so well that it's
you're right about that. Yes.
okay.
Yeah, and that's something that I think a lot of lay people don't really understand is that like having a pipe organ is not the same thing as having like a Casio keyboard.
piano.
It's not something that you buy once and then you throw away in 10 years when there's something better down the line. This is an investment that your church community makes for potentially hundreds of years, right?
Yeah.
There are some cathedral organs in Europe that, while the majority of the mechanism might be newer, a lot of the casework dates back to the 1600s, the 1500s, and that was an investment that community made all the way back then that the community is still reaping the benefits of today, just because it was built well and it was maintained by the church for that long.
Man, that's okay. Wow, that's like almost overwhelming.
It's yes,
glad
yes.
I don't have to deal with the logistics of pipe organs at my church.
Well, yeah. I mean, you talk about overwhelming. Like
yeah.
my job is to build things that are going to outlive me, and you can look at my skin. I'm quite young, and I'm building things that will hopefully last for 100 or more years.
Yeah. How long do you say you've been in this so far?
I started working for this company the summer of 2019, so I'm coming up on 8 years now working for them.
Nice. I got married early 2020, so like roughly as long as I've been married, or a little bit longer. You've been sitting here with these.
I've been tinkering away.
Thousands of pipes. Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome, man.
Yes.
Okay. So, sorry, I got distracted. I told you going into this, like, I know nothing about pipe organs. I knew
That's
I was going to
okay.
do this. Okay.
That's all right, man.
So for this series, before we get to more organs, we have a special segment we're doing called Real or Fantasy. We're just asking everybody a series of rapid questions. If you don't know the answer, you say, I don't know, or you can be like, I don't really go to church enough to know that answer, whatever. If you're not in church leadership, because like sometimes we're out in the pastor, sometimes we're people who build organs or pews. So we're like, not all questions might be applicable, but if you know the answer, that would be cool to learn.
Sure.
So are you ready for, trying to see, is there anything else as far as this? Yeah, no, just.
When you say
you just give
rapid
a
fire,
couple-
are we talking like a few words or like a sentence at
Like-
most?
Yeah.
All
Sorry. Like if you can keep it under 2 sentences, that'd be great. The last one, I just want like 1 or 2 words per thing. But all right, let's jump into this then. All right. So, Will, That's a little too quiet. Just tweak that a little bit. Okay. What monthly expenses does a church have that many people might not think? Pipe organs, apparently. Well, what else?
Yeah, so about every 6 months, if you've got a pipe organ, it needs to be tuned, and that's an expense that people don't often think about. But the biggest one is probably payroll.
Yeah. People just God pays them, right?
Nope, the people do, sadly.
Yeah. Right. So
All the money that a church needs is in that church. It just happens to be in the pockets of its parishioners.
Yeah. Okay. So what's a struggle that church leadership faces regularly that might shock some people to think about?
Definitely the difficulty of fundraising.
Yeah.
It's easy to fundraise for the big projects that you can see. It's a lot harder to fundraise for things like HVAC and roof leaks.
Yeah.
Things that are really, really important, but you don't get a plaque for it.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right. So what's the most interesting room in the church you attend, and how does the layout of that room serve the functionality of that room?
Definitely our worship space. It was built originally in 1891 in the cruciform style. So there's an altar in the front on a little raised platform. We've got transepts out on either side, and then the nave extends all the way towards the narthex at the back. And our organ is in the back of the room, which means that the sound of that organ is behind everybody who is singing in the congregation.
Ooh.
And that helps to facilitate congregational hymning.
I like it. Okay. Cool. All right. Funny, because I think you just answered the next question, is how important is the layout of the worship area in a church building?
Super important.
Yeah.
The purpose of a worship space is to facilitate worship. And I don't want to poo-poo anybody, but I got to tell you, it disappoints me when I walk into a worship space and there's a basketball hoop on either side and a court on the floor. That tells me that this is not the place that worship was intended to be in.
Yeah. Which, I mean, you can worship anywhere, but
You totally can. Yes, God is everywhere and always loves us.
yeah. But
I just have
first
preferences.
football to basketball anyway. But so I'm sorry. So in 1 or 2 word answers, so just super rapid fire for this last part, could you explain who is responsible for each of the following areas at your local church? Just got a list of 10 here. So number 1 is landscaping.
Volunteers.
All right. Budgeting.
Rector and our treasurer.
And rector is just the head pastor for those who are
Correct.
unfamiliar.
Yes.
Okay.
That's our priest in charge.
Hospital visits.
The rector and occasionally volunteers as well.
All right. Wedding or funeral arrangements.
That's a volunteer in coordination with clergy.
Awesome. Theological correction.
I guess clergy, but correction isn't really something that we feel the need to do all that often.
Yeah, fair enough. Building maintenance.
Mostly volunteers, but we do have a staff person on site for larger needs.
Cool. Creating the worship set list.
That would be our director of music and organist.
Cool. Teaching.
Volunteers.
All right. Parking lot traffic.
That would be a company that we contract with to maintain our parking garage.
Nice. So, okay. That's parking. That's so interesting. Okay.
We're an
Last
urban
one.
parish.
That's so cool. Last one. Greeting and welcoming people. I'm assuming Sunday morning, but
That would be our ushers.
nice. Well, we successfully ran through the game. I feel like I know your church better. I would never have guessed a parking lot. I don't think I've been to a church with a parking lot. Like not like lot, but like a garage. I think that's what you were talking about, right? Yeah. I don't think I've been to one with one of those. That's cool. So it's, I always lived in either like suburbs or not directly in the city, I guess. So yeah.
Our church is right in the center of town, and we used to own a lot of land around our church, and that land has since been sold to a number of banks and museums and lots of places that now hold, they're important fixtures of our city. But we had to park somewhere, so we built a parking garage underneath the banking building across the street from us.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. TJ talks about how like the parking thing really isn't an issue at his church. And I'm like, some churches it's an issue. And I feel like
It,
urban with banks around, it sounds like that could be a struggle. So, yeah.
there has been a decades-long painful back and forth between our church and the contractor that serves our parking garage. So I understand the importance of
Oh, yeah.
of
Yeah.
maintaining traffic patterns and all that. That's a real struggle.
Oh, yeah. I hate to be the guy that like plugs what he's currently doing, the name of the series and all. But man, talk about your holy logistics.
Ha! Yes.
That's why, like, I feel like church podcasts, instead of getting like the snare drums, you gotta throw some organ in there. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. So in our emails, talking about getting ready for this episode, you had to like prep me, just do backwards than usual, where I'm usually the prep of the guest. I'm gonna do. I don't know nothing. You're talking about how complex the process of crafting pipes for an organ can be. We've already talked a little bit about that, but like, I know you mentioned like, what was it called, warping points or something? Like, there's a lot that goes into it.
Mhm.
Could you maybe just break down for those like me who don't know anything? What does the process look like? How many steps are there to creating a pipe organ, or just like a single pipe even? Like,
Sure.
how much goes into that?
So I'm going to frame this as as a conversation of inputs and outputs. So the output that you get is obviously a pleasing sound to the ear when you are sitting in a pew, and the inputs are the organist sitting at the console playing a note with their hand, and the blower in the basement, which is supplying wind to the organ. So from that blower, the
What's
wind,
the blower look like?
the
Sorry.
blower, you're good. The blower looks like
My brain was like a leaf blower almost. I'm like, that's not right.
it is actually, it looks a lot like a gigantic leaf blower. Yes.
Cool.
It's a big impeller with usually a 10 or sometimes a 15-inch output on it. And that output is basically a duct which goes through a really large box called a static reservoir, which just sort of levels out, evens out the pressure of the air that's contained within it. And then from there, it goes through a series of other trunks and channels and ducts to where the rest of the organ is. Those feed these large boxes, which are called wind chests. And those wind chests all have the valves in them that control the pipes. So when the valve is open, it allows the wind from that blower going through the static reservoir to go up through the pipe and make a sound. And when the valve is closed, you hopefully get no sounds at all.
So like
from the console
what
side,
we see is like one person hitting a key, and we see those like 10 pipes, and we're like, wow, so pretty. But what's really happening is we got this like machine wind blowing thing going back and forth between hundreds or thousands of pipes and valves opening, like it's a whole like scene behind the scenes.
yes,
basically.
yes,
Okay.
it's a whole
That's-
mechanism.
that's
It's
so
a whole
cool.
thing. Yeah.
All right.
So when the organist plays that note, first of all, if you just turn on an organ and you put your hand on the keyboard, nothing's going to happen until you pull out one of the stop knobs, which are on either side of that organ of the key desk. And what those stop knobs do is it assigns a certain sound, a certain instrument, to a certain keyboard in that keyboard stack. Each keyboard stack is roughly assigned to one room of pipes or a division. And there are a number of different kinds of pipes that are contained within that division, and each division serves a different purpose. The four most popular divisions in church organs are called the Great Division, the Swell Division, the Choir Division, and the Pedal Division. The pedal division is obviously played by the foot pedals. That's the organist using their feet to play the biggest pipes that are in that instrument. Usually, that's the 16-foot or the 32-foot long pipes in that organ are played with the foot pedals. The swell and the choir division are what are called enclosed divisions, which means that all of the pipes in there are in a box that has a set of shutters on the front of it that can open or close to diminish the amount of sound that escapes, or in other words, it can attenuate the volume of all the pipes that are within that chamber. And the choir division is one such division, and it's usually built to help accompany a choir. And it's usually placed in the room wherever the choir is. That's where the choir division is set up. And the great division is usually the loudest division. That's usually where you see the trumpets and the tubas and the kind of the loudest stops in that organ,
Mhm.
because it is unenclosed and it's usually closer to where the congregation sits. So that's the three main manual or keyboard divisions, and then the pedal division. So when you pull a
Yeah.
stop, when you turn on that stop, what you're doing is you are telling the organ, okay, if I hold any of the keys that are on the keyboard associated with that division, then those keys are going to make the sound that's associated with the type of instrument on the stop that I pulled. So if you pull a
Wow.
stop that says like cello 16 foot, right? That means
Mhm.
that bottom C is going to be playing a sound from a 16-foot pipe, which is a sound wave that's 32 feet long and propagates in your space at that at that frequency. Whatever that would be, which is somewhere in my head, but I can't tell you right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a really, really deep one. And then you've got 61 notes from there going all the way up to top C, which is probably in that case going to be an inch or so tall. And
Mhm.
you can draw on as many stops as you want to. If you want a really, really loud sound, you can have them all off except for just one if you want something really, really quiet and really intimate. And each of these stops, some of them are really, really loud natively, some of them are really, really soft. There are some stops, like the tuba stop, for example, that one
Mhm.
is almost deafening when you're next to it, really. And there are other ones, called strings, which are meant to emulate the sounds of string instruments. If you've got a viola or maybe a dulciana, that's a really, really,
Mhm.
really quiet sound. And so that's the kind of thing that you might play intermittently at a funeral, or, as sort of,
Yeah.
transitional music between parts of the service. So there are lots of different options for the organist. Obviously, each of these tops has a slightly different color, and so adding in one stop or one rank of pipes into the orchestra of pipes that you're already playing is going to be sufficient to change the timbre of the whole instrument. Really, you have a whole
Yeah.
lot of musical flexibility to manipulate sound and make something really pleasing.
Yeah. Yeah. I I'm a child, and my brain is thinking, okay, Beauty and the Beast, he has a castle, maybe. That one seems
Maestro
plausible.
forte, yes.
That Davy Jones scene, like, on the ship, there's just no
Uh-huh.
way he had enough room for all this. Like, that what? Right?
Well,
Like,
Davy Jones's ship is a little bit magical.
that's
He's
true.
got
Maybe
he's
big on
got
the
it,
inside. Pull
and
like
it's bigger
Doctor
on the
Who.
inside. Exactly. Yeah. 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 I mean,
Yeah.
in the same
That's
way
like got
that
so much
like
space.
somehow like these 17th century pirates had access to like three-shot rotating cannons. I
It's
somehow
true.
also believe that
It's
they had
true.
access to
They're
adequate
they're hanging
space
out
for
with gods and, like,
a
going to
pipe
the
organ.
underworld. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they can make it
I
happen.
could suspend my disbelief still, I guess. Well, I'm just like, man, they're just taking up so much space. Okay, so, oh man, oh man, it's so interesting. There's so much more than I ever would have guessed goes into just a pipe organ. Um, Sorry, I'm still kind of like, wow. So,
That's okay. It's an
I'm gonna jump
overwhelming
down a
thing.
little bit. I'm gonna jump down a little bit here.
Sure.
Um, so all these different pieces, they have to work together basically perfectly. That to be designed, all that stuff. We did a series last year on the show with like faith and science stuff, and like some of the biologists and stuff we were talking to, they were talking about like ecosystems and how like it's actually just incredible how one tiny little creature, bacteria, whatever, throws off the whole ecosystem. Now, they can't help but think of like the body of God, whatever, when they're talking about that as Christians who just happen to be doing that work.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever think about stuff like that? Like you're like this whole huge organ with like thousands of pipes and all these like tiny little pieces going together. Like, does that ever like occur to you, or is it all just like mechanical, or are you ever like, wow, and God designed something even bigger somehow?
I do sometimes think about the metaphysics, I guess, of it all, of the complexity of the universe that we were given.
Yeah.
Um, as far as the work that I do, I think there are definitely days where I get to sort of wax poetical in my brain about how glorious it all is. There are also, frankly, days where I'm just glad that the work is over, because like
Yeah.
when there's something going really really wrong, and you've got a part that was made by some individual craftsperson 100 years ago that no longer exists, and you've got to figure out how to make that part now today. Like that can
Yeah.
be difficult. That can add hours to your day that you didn't anticipate. Um,
Yeah.
and it's all, at the end of the day, it's all joyous, and I'm grateful for the work that we do, and the people I get to work with. Um, but there are definitely days that are just an endless slog of tedium. I don't want to deny that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get it. It's people only hear, I guess, the parts we want them to hear because it's a podcast, and like a lot of times, me and my co-host TJ, we both work in a restaurant, same franchise, different place, but a lot of times we have like the God moment in the episode, and we'll be like, oh, well, this customer did this, or I got to think today about how like I served all these people, and that was just like a blessing, whatever.
Mm.
But like 9 times out of 10, that's not what I'm thinking of at the end of the day. I'm thinking of like I just wish the customers would give me a break for like 10 minutes.
Absolutely. Yes.
But like every now and then you're like, oh yeah, that is like I did get to just serve these families and see all these smiling faces, and that's cool. Most of the time you're just kind of like, man, I'd like a break. I'm tired. So yeah, I get it. I get it. But not the same thing, but similar vibe. So you mentioned on the emails, the Industrial Revolution really changed a lot with pipe organs, and like listen to you, you're like it sounds almost mechanical, like the fan blower thing going back and forth.
Mhm.
How did we do this before that though? Like I
Sure.
want to know how much this changed, but I'm also like, how did we like if it involves a blower and all of these like hundreds of people? How did people make organs back before we had like little robots and stuff? You know?
Sure. Yeah. No, that's a fair question. Um, we can go back pretty far, actually. The pipe organ as we know it today originated as a Greek invention. It's described, I think, first described by, oh, I'm going to get the name wrong, but I'm just going to say Aceclius of Athens, I think was his name, in the
Yeah,
6th
something like that.
century
Yeah.
BCE. And he was an engineer who designed this machine called a hydraulis, which uses a reservoir of air that is pushed down, as essentially like pushing a barrel, an overturned barrel, down into a body of water. And the air on the inside of that barrel gets pressurized, and you can use that pressurized air to feed a series of pipes. And that instrument was first used in Greek theater to reproduce the sounds of birds, and occasionally was used to play tunes for singing, for more of a congregational thing, but it was usually just kind of a gimmicky bird sound machine. And fast forward about the 1,000 years or so, and we get the development of bellows. So these are much larger human powered devices that has an intake valve on one side, and you lift up the lid of it, and when you set it down, the weight of that lid is what creates pressure on the inside of that bellow, and it slowly releases its pressure into the rest of the pipes. But the problem with that, of course, is that you have to either have a couple of different sets of bellows all going at
Yeah.
once, or you lose the sound, right? Once that one bellow deflates. So later on, not a couple, an awful lot of engineers worked to create water wheel powered pipe organs, and
Right.
this was the way of things for several hundred years throughout Europe. Um, a lot of those old cobblestone churches were either near a stream or had a stream brought to them by a little channel that was dug for the purposes of powering its pipe organ. And so that water
Nice.
wheel would spin a series of gears, which would lift with a series of camshafts, would lift up the lids of bellows and operate the pipe organ. And
Fascinating.
so since then, if you wanted to get any bigger than that and you were in an urban area, you would just need to have a whole lot of people to operate these enormous hand pumped bellows. It is said, and this is apocryphal, but it's said that the organ that Beethoven would have played at full bore was operated by a small army of 50 boys just to run the
What?
bellows because it was
Crazy.
moving that much air. And so nowadays, of course, there is no upper limit to the size of an organ you can create. You can spend as much money as you want and build something absolutely enormous. The largest pipe organ in the world is at Boardwalk Hall, which is in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and it has somewhere in the range of 70 or 80,000 pipes in it.
80,000?
80,000 pipes. Yes, it's
Huh.
it's crazy. It is absolutely
That's
crazy.
insane.
But an instrument that size is only possible because it's got several different blowers feeding it, and you just couldn't do that with even the largest army of boys. You couldn't make that happen.
So like 30 minutes ago when I was like, there's not like 10 pipes, are you? You were like, dude, there's one with 80,000.
There's just so many more. Yes, it gets so big.
That is so cool. Okay. Man, wild. It is wild how far that's come.
Absolutely.
80,000 would not fit on Davy Jones' ship. But
No, that's in
so
in an arena.
yeah. Well, it's interesting to go back to like Greek stuff. So a lot of my fascination with church architecture also comes from what we've implemented since like Greek plays and stuff of
Hmm.
like a lot of sanctuaries still have that same model of like a stage in the middle and the kind of seating going outwards, which it made sense because like it's easier to hear whatever. Frank Viola writes in Pagan Christianity, talks about like some of the issues we've had since then. Though, is a lot of times what happens is we make it all about a pastor or the people on stage because it does something like your mental psyche as well. So even though it serves that practical function, it's still like we have to wrestle with the spiritual implications of keeping that kind of layout. And it's like, oh, do we still want to do that? Church I-10 actually kind of does both. Like sometimes we have everyone facing one direction, we have the big organ, and it's cool. Then sometimes they get more centered and people kind of have circle around and we're sharing the communion together. And I think it also matters, is the podium in the front or do you have the elements for the sacrament in the front? Like I think all these little things I think really matters on like how we do worship. When a church comes to you guys, Cornel Organs, Cornell, sorry, but anyway, they're ordering something. They're not just like ordering a piece and you like deliver it. Like I assume it actually has to be built for the sanctuary, especially when you're talking about how many pipes and stuff. Like I don't imagine like they can just go pick one up and bring it to the church or anything like that,
That is
right?
that is correct. Yes. Yeah. The first step that we take when a church calls us is we visit that church and we usually bring some pipes with us to hear how they
Mhm.
sound in that space. And we will use those pipes in all the different corners of the space to figure out what the space does acoustically. And we'll usually take some notice of the architectural features of that space, things that we might want to
Mhm.
include in the facade that we build for them. And then we take all those elements and we go back to our drawing board, create a proposal, which includes the the total number of pipes and just sort of the size and the scope of the thing that we want to build. It includes some renderings of what it could potentially look like in that space. And then once they approve those drawings and start paying us, then we can start ordering materials and building the real thing.
Do you ever get like pastors with like spiritual implication stuff? So like you mentioned like at your church the organs are behind because it kind of facilitates that worshiping together instead of like the organs face fronting. Do
Mhm.
pastors ever like mention stuff like that, or like the churches when they're ordering like, hey, we want it to be like this, we don't want people to be performing for them but with like, is that kind of stuff ever brought up?
The church usually has some idea of what they want and kind of where they want the organ to be in their space before they call us. And I will say, 9 times out of 10, we're not dealing with the pastor at a church directly. Long before a church is ready to call us, they've formed an organ committee, which has
Mhm.
met to
Yeah.
kind of tour around the other organs in their area. Maybe there's one organ builder that they like over another, and so they go and find a bunch of their organs and listen to those organs in their spaces. And then once they've got an idea of what they want and how much budget they have, then at that point they come to us and say, "Hey, we want an organ that's about this size. We want it to be, at the back of our space. So we want it to be divided. We want to have a sanctuary division behind where the altar is, and then an additional antiphonal or gallery division up in the balcony, so that we got sound coming from multiple spaces in our sanctuary." And then we take that idea and we expand upon it, and we tell them, "Look, this is what you want. This, looking at your budget, is what we can do for you." And then, we
Yeah.
we we kinda meet in the middle. And I will say, usually, organ committees have a pretty good idea of what's realistic.
Yeah. I
So
mean, this whole
it's
organ
rare
thing's been around
that
for a
we've
while, I
gotta give
guess.
people bad news and tell you, you've got $10 million ambitions on a $4 budget.
Yeah.
But
Okay. Cool. Cool. So, getting near the end here, I can't help but ask, and like, I like organs. I don't want them to go anywhere,
Mhm.
but just thinking about it logistically, with like the digital age and everything upon us, and like in my mind, even with that many sounds, it probably could create a digital keyboard that pretty much imitates anything. Do we think there's still going to be like long term need for organs? Do we think it's going to be replaced by like the digital age stuff, or I don't know. Like, how does this work out in your mind?
So, to an extent, that replacement is already going on right now. Um,
Hmm.
I think a lot of the church organs that exist don't have any pipes in them at all, right? It's a box with speakers that
Oh,
are playing into the room. And
weird.
I will say, like, those are perfectly functional instruments. Um,
Mhm.
and while a pipe organ is this big, expensive, difficult thing to maintain, uh, when you're planning for the long-term life of your church, um, a lot of times the big expensive organ winds up being a better investment long term, because a digital organ is something that you're going to have to replace every 10 to 15 years. And while a digital organ is certainly cheaper than installing a brand new pipe organ in your space, it's not that much cheaper, and it doesn't sound as good, I gotta say. They're getting a
Mhm.
lot better, and so, I think there will certainly come a time where digitally reproduced sounds can really will sound just as good, just as authentic as a
Mhm.
as a real, quote, unquote, "real" pipe organ, but
Yeah.
I don't think we're there yet, and I think there are enough. I kinda hate to use this term, but there are enough purists out there in the world that I think there's gonna
Yeah.
be a market for the real thing for a very long time. And more to the point, I think, as we're seeing an uh, uh, let's just call it a decrease in Sunday attendance, right? Like,
Yeah.
as we're seeing a shrinking in the number of people that have an interest in worship weekly, um, from my perspective, from the industry that I work in, we're actually getting more work from that, because what's happening is smaller churches are closing down because they can't afford to be open when you've got 6 people in the pews and nobody's pledging.
Yeah.
But what happens is that those 6 people then go to the larger church in the middle of town, which has to expand.
Mhm.
And if that organ gets a whole lot of money, and
Yeah.
the congregation that's there is a very musical congregation, musically minded congregation, and the organ is integral to the way that they worship, well, then that congregation that suddenly got this influx of people and an influx of money suddenly has the resources to make some repairs that they've been postponing for 30, 40, 50 years. And so at that point, they
Wow.
call us, and we help them maintain the investment that they made 50, 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And so that's where it really starts to pay dividends in the long run. And I don't want to
It's
plug.
fully logistics.
Yeah, like I don't want to plug pipe organs in particular, or say that one style of worship is inherently better or not. But when people think about the longevity of the space that you're creating, when you make a space that's intended to last well beyond the years of anybody who's sitting in the pews today, that changes me as somebody who's sitting in that pew, right? That tells me that this is a place where people have gathered long before I existed and will continue to gather long after I am gone. And that continuity of worship is just so impactful for a community.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in general, when it comes to like new tech and stuff, I'm like annoyingly both and. I feel like I get on people's nerves because I'll leave AI out of it for now because that's a whole nother conversation.
Oh,
But like,
don't get me started.
but like, we'll just use what we're talking about. Is like I think it's probably a perfectly good example. At one point, that like whole like water wheel, all this other stuff to like make an organ, that was crazy new technology. And there were probably people who were like, why would you want imitation of bird sounds? We could just go hear the bird. Like there was probably people making similar arguments when we've had this technology. But then like the organs come into its own beautiful thing. And guess what? Like I enjoy the sounds of birds and I enjoy the sound of an organ. It like for me, another example, like I love Kindles and I love the Bible app and I love that I can just like have a nice little digital book here. But sometimes I'm going to go pick up my grandfather's Bible that he left me because it just means more. And it's King James. I don't even like King James. But it means more because it was his, right? And like there's still some notes in it, some like highlights, whatever. And I feel like there's got to be room.
Having a tangible thing is different from having a PDF of that same thing. Absolutely.
That's why, like, I love what you're saying when you're talking about like the organ and like outliving you. Like, oh, this is something that's been here for generations, and like we're talking about church unity. For me, it's not just the people alive, but it's people who came before us. And I'm like, yeah, that connects us to our history, and I think that's beautiful. And hey, maybe sometimes there is room for in the fellowship hall where sometimes we do Wednesday service instead, we'll have like the digital one in there because it's cheaper and whatever. Like, I don't know. I feel like maybe there is room for both, but I do love that you were talking about. Like, I just think it is beautiful to have that longevity, that thing that we can touch and be like, those before me used the same thing, worshipped the same way that I did. Like something about that physical part of it, I feel like it's pretty powerful. Sorry, that was a whole tangent. That wasn't even a question. I'm sorry.
But I agree with you that there is something, I guess, intangible about a tangible connection to the people that came before you, and in the same way that there's a tangible connection to the people that will come after, and digital organs, while they can produce the same sounds from a physics perspective as a pipe organ can, they are not moving the same amount of air. They're not. They don't have the same continuity of purpose and the same continuity of spirit as something more traditional.
Yeah. Love it. So, before wrapping up here, if you had to put it into just like one or two sentences, what has been, what's being a part of this business meant to you, and how does the work that you do really impact what happens Sunday morning for so many churchgoers each week?
So I have always been in church choirs since I was maybe 3 or 4 years old in like a little preschool children's ministry. I have always been a singer. And I don't know if I'm a particularly good one, but I know that
Probably better
when
than
I am singing with other people, my love for them grows. It is physically impossible to sing a song with somebody that you hate. And especially congregational singing, right? When you all come together and you all sing a hymn and there's organ behind you and it's helping that whole process take place, there is something so unifying about that experience. It unites us with Christ and with one another in a way that really can't be replicated anywhere else. And while organs aren't necessary for congregational singing. You can get
Yeah.
the exact same spiritual unity with one another from a praise band or from a CD player, right? Like whatever it is. Um, but being able to build instruments that facilitate that sense of unity for congregations all across the country, across the world,
Yeah.
is huge for me. That's just there's no higher calling than helping people love one another more deeply.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, that's so cool. That's so cool, man. Well, uh, one thing we do ask every guest is if you had to provide just a tangible action that would help better engender church unity today. Um, I don't know what comes to mind to you. What's something you think people could stop and do after this podcast that would help them be better united with their fellow brother, sister in the church?
Take a moment and hum or sing Amazing Grace. I know our country just
Mhm.
passed its 250th birthday. Amazing Grace was written not long after our country was founded in 1779. So its 250th anniversary is coming up in just a couple of years. And that's been something that, I don't know a single Christian that doesn't know Amazing Grace. I don't care what your background is. I don't
Yeah.
care if you've got an organ in your church or if you've got, guitars and speakers, whatever it is, Amazing Grace. And that's something that we can all share.
Mhm.
Saved a wretch
Mhm.
like me. That's a really powerful, powerful hymn.
Yeah. Yeah. Music is just so uniting. I know I grew up Pentecostal, and before I now Lutheran, but before I like switched or anything, I remember like had arguments with other Christians, whatever, but like I was still friends with them. And I think one of the first times I remember really being like, oh, they are just like us. It was actually a Methodist. It was like one of those progressive Methodists because, I was more conservative Pentecostal. Now I'm a dirty liberal Lutheran, I guess, whatever. But like, I wrote him off like, oh, he thinks he's Christian. We just can't have to leave these topics alone. And then like one day, he was a music major and he was playing Prayer Bells of Heaven. And I'm like, heck yeah, dude, let's do this. It was like, oh, wait. Yeah, we're the same. So, I like that. I think that's really powerful. What do you think
We are.
would change in the world if everybody just stopped this week and at some point just hummed the chorus of like Amazing Grace?
I don't think anything big would happen, but I don't think the Lord acts in big sweeping ways. I think the Lord changes the world by changing individual hearts. And
Mhm.
if by humming that tune to yourself, it helps you accept that the people who worship in the church down the street from you really aren't that different from you, even if their
Mhm.
political beliefs might differ, even if what they think happens at the Eucharist is slightly different than your understanding of what happens at the Eucharist. We all worship the same God.
Mhm.
We all dedicate our lives to the same Jesus who saved us, who created us, who loves us. And music helps us remember that we aren't so different after all.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. Good stuff. Good stuff, man. So, the last thing we actually do, it's called our God Moment segment. And TJ always likes to make me go first. By not being here, he has succeeded. I will have to go first.
Did you read
Uh,
in the background?
yes, and
Yes.
he actually played that. That's not a digital sound. That is we recorded TJ playing the digital.
How cool is that?
That's the God Moment sound. It's great.
I gotta create a didgeridoo organ stop next. That'd be fun.
We need that. That's what
We
the
do.
whole church podcast needs. We need more
Yeah.
donations so that we can give a
Yes.
specific.
For a small
Man.
donation of $2 million, you
Yeah,
too
yeah.
can have.
Oh man, but we just share a moment where we've seen God in the last week or so. Um, yeah, whether blessing, curse, not curse, blessing, challenge, whatever. Um, I will go first. And TJ's not here, so I have to. He was gonna make me anyway, but I can't remember if I've shared this or not. Is the problem? I might be sharing the same God moment twice. If I
You've done a
am,
lot
I'm
of God moments
sorry.
at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah, it's hard to keep up. But the place I work currently, um, I had to go in extra time to close when I had already opened that day. It was tiring and long, and I was upset. And then the truck delivery came, and everybody had to stop working and wait on him when it's already been a long day, and I don't feel like sitting there waiting. And one of the younger people who work there is like, "Why do everybody hate Catholics?" And I'm like, man, what an interesting person to ask that to, right? I'm like, well, I do a podcast. Like, I hate being that guy. Just like, I do a podcast. But like, I know what you're talking about. Because like, I've seen some of that in my family, seen that around, especially Pentecostal circles, Baptist Catholics. And unfortunately, there's a lot of fake, whatever. We had a whole conversation. And then one of the other managers popped up, was like, oh, hey, actually, I go to a Lutheran church now. And like, we weren't trying to like push religion on anybody, but it was just such a like cool moment of like, I happened to be right there when I didn't want to be there at a time when someone was going to just ask that question, I'm like, man, I feel blessed to have been there for that conversation, even if, for reasons we couldn't get super religious. It was like, I'm glad I was there for that and got to briefly kind of speak to it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those "Here I am, Lord, send me" moments.
Yeah.
Right,
Or times such
right
as
place,
this. Yeah,
right
good
time.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about you, man? Have you want to share a moment you've seen God in recently?
Sure. This year, my partner and I tried something new, and we planted a garden in our backyard. And when we planted
Cool.
it, uh, you know, we had both grown some things in the past, and I had a small garden growing up, and we got a couple of cucumbers, maybe a dozen tomatoes over the course of a summer, nothing major. But
Mhm.
through this year, I don't know what has been going on, but this year we have been getting a lot of produce.
Mhm.
Um, we have, like, a problematic number of tomatoes on the vine right now. She is working tirelessly trying to can them all and, and preserve them for later. She's making the most delicious pickles I have ever had in my entire life out of
Nice.
cucumbers that I didn't even believe we would get in our backyard.
That is so
And
cool.
it's amazing how just a I mean, faith the size of a mustard seed, right? Like, there's a literal
Yeah.
metaphor here. We aren't literally growing mustard, but, like, faith the size of a cucumber seed, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's what it takes, and then you wind up with 50, 60 cucumbers, more than you could ever eat.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Backup God moment for me then. When we got this new house, we have HOA, a lot of other stuff. Like I had to give up at my old house. I had this pollinator garden and I was in love with, and I talked a lot about it on the show because I care a lot about like the pollinators and stuff. And
Mm.
I'm weird. I like ecosystems. I think they're cool.
That's a
Um,
good thing.
but it got out of
Christian care
hand.
is
It
biblical.
got really wild and hard to maintain. So we weren't able to do it here. But every now and then I plant stuff that I'm like, I know this is good for the pollen. Neighbor moved in forever ago, but like hasn't actually moved in. Like bought the house a while back. Finally moving in is straight up setting up a pollinator garden in her backyard that faces my backyard. And I'm like,
Oh,
yes, here
how
we
amazing.
go, here we go.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm so excited, man.
What a gift.
I'm like, I'm gonna like connect a garden across the yards. We'll figure something out, man. But no, it's great. Such a good gift. But yeah, so praise God. If you guys appreciate pollinator gardens or this podcast, consider sharing it with a friend, an enemy, or a cousin, especially your cousins. They're more obligated to listen than your friends, so share it with them. You could always go to our website. You can purchase one of the t-shirts. It's going to help promote our show. Helps get the word out about what we're doing here, all that good stuff. It does a lot. It does a lot. Gives us money to help pay for mics and apparently camera. My camera keeps going out. Need someone to buy a t-shirt so I get a new camera. You guys also consider checking out the other shows on the Amazon Podcast Network. I mentioned Systematic Ecology. I'm also do Be Living Water. Christian Ashley I just recorded with. He does Let Nothing Move You. Go through Bible one chapter at a time. Maybe a little bit differently than I would, but we talk about the Bible. It's good stuff. And we hope you enjoyed this show, though. Coming up, we're going to be talking with some representatives from the Church of God of Prophecy, as well as the AME Zion Church, to discuss behind the scenes of how church denominations function. So that'll be fun. After that, we're going to be talking with an esteemed guest about the building of church pews. Just get a carpenter on the show, guys. And finally, at the end of season 1, Francis Chan will be on, but he doesn't know about it. So somebody does have to tell him. Because if you don't tell him, I'm not going to tell him. And season 1 will just go forever. It's been like 8 years now. So if you want us to do a season 2 or to stop saying season 1, it's up to you. Get a hold of Francis Chan. Until then, later.